Hello everyone, I'm Nola and welcome to my channel. For my new subscribers, I would love to say thank you so very much for allowing me into your lives and into your homes, into your space. To everyone else that's been here a while, thank you for being back today. Today is Sunday, January the 18th, 2026. And today I would love to have a chat with all of you, with all of us about when do you know that you are spiritually awakened? You know, there's been so much talk around the subject of being spiritually awakened, and I think a lot of people are asking that question right now. So, without further ado, I'm going to say, what does it look like when you're spiritually awakened? What does it feel like? And how do you know you're not doing it wrong? We're going to clear up some of the myths, okay? There's so much information out there, beloved, about stages, about symptoms and vibrations, and stories on dark nights of the soul. There's lists and timelines, and while some of this can be helpful, a lot of it can leave you feeling more anxious than peaceful. Yeah, I know, I've been through it. So what I want to say first, clearly and gently, you're not waiting to become spiritually awakened. You're not waiting to become spiritually awakened. That's the good news. You always have been. This is excellent news, right? So spiritual awakening is not something new that suddenly happens to you. It's not like switching on a light, flipping on a light switch. And it's not a flash of light. And it's not a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. We've been told so many stories through books, through courses, through retreats, and teachers and videos such as this, that awakening is something dramatic or instant or rare. And I think many people are quietly waiting for that moment. Sadly, it is sad that many people are quietly waiting for that moment. And I say this with love and a bit of humor because I've done it too. There's no lightning bolt coming. No, there's no lightning bolt coming. What's really happening is much simpler and much deeper. I tell you this. Each of us is moving on a different timeline. When I say different, I mean on our own personal timelines. We are shaped by our own soul story, our experiences, our losses, our choices, and our readiness. That doesn't make anyone ahead or behind. There's no hierarchy here. I promise you. It's not linear. It's not a race. It's not a ladder. It's a remembering, beloved. It's a remembering at your pace. Spiritual awakening isn't something we become. It's something you recognize. And that recognition often comes quietly. Sometimes through reflection, sometimes through disruption, sometimes through grief or through trauma, and sometimes through relief, right? And sometimes it looks like everything is simply falling apart, right? But here's the part that changed everything for me. What's real doesn't collapse. What depended on fear does. Let me say this again a little slower. What's real doesn't collapse. What depended on fear does collapse. And when we begin returning to ourselves, to our authentic selves, to our soul level, when we return back to our soul within us, The structures that relied on disconnection start to loosen. That can look like chaos. It can feel frightening. And it can feel like the whole world is unraveling. Your personal world or the physical world that we live in. It can feel like those worlds are totally unraveling. But often what's actually happening is reclamation. It's parts of you reclaiming yourself. Reclamation that is happening. You have more than likely felt this collapse inside yourself before. I felt that within myself, this collapsing, and I'm certain that many of you have felt this collapse inside yourself. And you probably felt it when you stopped outsourcing your worth, when you stopped waiting for permission, and when you stopped trying to fix yourself. I'm going to share with you my personal experience, what fell away that wasn't me. It was everything that was never mine to carry. And so many of us are carrying stuff that is not ours to carry. And that's why so many of us feel unsettled right now. Not because something has gone wrong, but because something is losing its grip. There is something else that needs to be said, because this is where many of us get stuck. From the moment we are born, we are trained and conditioned by our families, by our cultures, by our religions, and the generations that came before us. We are taught what to believe, how to think. Yes, many of us are told how to think, right? How to behave, and what it means to be good, what it means to be a good person, right? They love to tell us how to be good, what it means to be good. For many of us, that training came with strong messages about humility, obedience, endurance, and suffering. And here's the part about not questioning. I remember as a child, I would question a lot of things, and I was told I had far too many questions and that I should never question God, because that was one of my favorite questions that I asked, So many of us were told not to question, and we learned about carrying suffering as if it were a virtue. Sometimes I remember people that carried it almost as though it was a crown, kind of like a spiritual badge of honor. For a long time, many of us did not question it, not because it's true for us, but because it's familiar, because our parents believed it, because our grandparents believed it, and so we did too. But then something begins to happen. You start to feel things. You start to question things. You start to notice that what you were raised to believe isn't working for you anymore. Or perhaps it never did work for you. Okay? And that's not just your mind doing this, it's your soul. Your soul begins to recognize other truths that resonate more deeply, truths that perhaps feel more honest, more spacious, and more loving. And this is where awakening can become uncomfortable. Beloved, this is where awakening can become uncomfortable. Because instead of being taught to trust that inner knowing, many of us were taught to distrust it. We were taught that questioning meant rebellion, that choosing differently meant pride, that stepping away from inherited beliefs meant a lack of humility. a lack of respect. We were just disregarding what the ancestors had taught us or believed. And yet none of that is true. So when awakening begins, it often comes with guilt, and I mean a large amount of guilt. One feels afraid. I was afraid to tell my family certain things about what I was experiencing on a spiritual level. One, some of them would never have believed it. Two, a lot of them would have rebuked me. Now, if you know, you know, right? So you feel disloyal for seeing clearly. You feel selfish for wanting something different. And you feel as though you're betraying your past. That's the thing. That's one of the most difficult things for myself. And I can only speak for myself. I felt as though I was betraying everyone, my family's beliefs, the beliefs of my grandparents, my ancestors, and so on. But nope, this is what matters. Questioning is not a failure of humility. It is an act of integrity. Questioning is not a failure of humility. I'm saying it again. Yes, it's an act of integrity. Awakening does not mean rejecting your family or your history. Does not mean this. Awakening means recognizing that their path does not have to be yours. Choosing truth over conditioning is not arrogance. It is courage. It is absolute courage, because it takes courage to do the work and to choose differently. And this brings me to healing. I believe deeply in taking time to heal, to tend to wounds, emotional or physical, but I'm really speaking about emotional wounds here. To understand what shaped us, what shaped you, what shaped me, what shaped us. I've done therapy off and on throughout my life, and I don't dismiss it. It is very, very helpful if you're willing to do the work. Okay, because you can go to therapy all you want, but if you don't come home and do the work, what's the point? But I've also learned this. Sometimes the work in therapy reaches a natural completion. Not because it didn't matter, because it did. It absolutely did matter. But because you are ready to carry your life forward. So it reaches a natural completion. Not because what happened didn't matter, but because it no longer gets to define you. What happened to you no longer gets to define who you are. Acceptance doesn't mean approval either. Okay? Acceptance does not mean approval. It means completion. Wow. And forgiveness isn't a single act. It often comes in layers. I have a story about forgiveness, my own personal experience, but for another day. Sometimes we think we've forgiven until life touches an old place, an old wound, and we realize there's more there. That doesn't mean we failed. It simply means we are human. We are human because the heart is such a complex thing. Oh my goodness, our hearts are so complex. Spiritual awakening isn't about never feeling pain again. It's about no longer abandoning yourself when pain arises. It stops when you constantly stop looking outside for validation. When you stop measuring yourself against spiritual ideals. When you stop trying to maintain a certain vibration. Yeah, we hear a lot about vibrations and how to maintain a vibration. It's when you return again and again to who you actually are. not perfected, not purified, but present, to be present with yourself, within your soul, when we stop searching out there for the answers and we constantly return to ourselves. And this matters deeply. We're not all at the same place. This matters deeply, okay? We're not all at the same place. We cannot possibly be. And that's not a hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy, it's a landscape. Some of us become more aware earlier, some later, some of us through joy, some through loss, some through choices we'd make again, and some through choices we wouldn't make again. Lessons learned. And that doesn't make anyone more enlightened or less evolved. It simply means we are walking different paths back to the same truth, to your soul, to your inner being, to who you are truly, to who I am truly. Every major life event, especially the painful ones, carries the potential for awakening, not because suffering is required, but because it strips away the illusions or the illusion. That's what suffering does. But it's not a place that you get to live. Suffering is not a place that you should be living in. And when illusion falls away, something honest remains. So if you're wondering whether you're spiritually awakened, let me offer this gently. If you're questioning, if you're reflecting, if you're feeling and returning to yourself, you are already awake. I promise you, you are already awake. You're not late. You're not too early. You're not missing anything. This isn't destruction, beloved. It is remembrance. It's when your soul starts to remember what it looks like. It's remembrance that looks like chaos. It often looks like chaos before it looks like peace, is what I'm trying to say. And remembrance often looks like chaos before it looks like peace. I cannot believe I've been doing this a year and I still have not perfected it, but I'm human. I'm not very technologically inclined, so you'll forgive me for all of the slip-ups and mispronunciations, the redoing stuff. And more than that, I want to thank you for being here one more time today. If this has touched you in any way, would you consider liking, subscribing, and sharing? And more than that, I want to speak about kindness. Kindness is so important. It's so important to be kind, gentle, and patient with yourself. And be kind to those you meet along the way, because every one of us is dealing with something that nobody knows anything about. So a kind hello, kind good morning, big smile, hi, how are you doing today? And keep it moving. Can pull people back from the edge. I know it's pulled me back. A warm good morning has pulled me back from the edge more times than I care to admit. Until the next time, take care of yourself, beloved, and bye for now.